Hello everyone, in this video I'll be looking at every single soldier weapon and determining which ones are the best, whether it be in general or only under specific circumstances. Weapons in unacceptable I consider to be bad, weapons in rejected are not bad but are surpassed by another weapon in almost every way. Those in acceptable aren't quite the best, but neither are they fully surpassed by another weapon. Those in recommended I consider to be the best in this slot for this class, but it isn't relegated to only one choice, since quite often many weapons are on par with each other and it just comes down to certain situations. I'll also have upgrade and downgrade arrows for weapons which are comparable to each other, and occasionally have a gold outline over weapons used by the best players, since you tend to pick up a thing or two after thousands of hours exclusively within casual 2-fort. Okay, let's start talking about soldier primaries. It's important to understand that the rocket launcher is one of the most versatile weapons in the game. So although the soldier is placed in the offensive class, it's equally defensive as well because of how good the primary is. The only real class counter to a soldier at close range is the Pyros air blast. Outside of that, a high skilled soldier can crush an entire enemy team with just their primary, since it deals so much damage both on a hit and in an area. The rocket jumper is the only soldier primary that cannot do this. Now I know it's used for Trollger and practicing rocket jumping, but to take this weapon seriously, you're increasing mobility at the cost of dealing damage, regardless of what secondary or melee you have. If you're extremely good at marker guarding, I'd actually suggest the Liberty Launcher instead, combined with either the Gunboats or the Conqueror. Those combos do hurt your mobility more than just using the rocket jumper, but the Liberty Launcher is going to be significantly more effective for surviving as a Trollger than using the shotgun, but I'll expand on that more when I get to the combo section. Now after saying good things about the Liberty Launcher, let me explain in great detail how awful it is. Minus 25% damage. 25%. This pretty much turns a soldier's primary into a secondary, and technically a weaker one at point blank range when excluding the splash damage. The positives on this weapon are good for overall versatility and mobility, but do not make up for the significant damage reduction. When you see the stats here, it's not just 90 versus 68. It's all the splash damage you're missing out from. It's the damage drop off at medium and long range. It's the fact that I need 3 rockets to destroy a level 1 sentry. I thought I was hallucinating when testing this weapon, but no. 2 rockets only do 136 damage and a level 1 sentry has 150 HP. So you really do feel that damage loss when fighting heavies, sentries, overhealed enemies, even medics at close to medium range you can't kill with 2 rockets anymore. Despite saying all this, weirdly it's not a bad weapon. It's terrible compared to most of these options here, yes, but it isn't bad overall. That's an important distinction. For example, you don't really feel that minus 25% damage loss when fighting low health classes like Scout, Sniper or Spy, since 2 rockets still kill them at close range, which just shows how good the soldier's primary is. So the increased projectile speed, extra clip, and less self-damage at point blank altogether make this weapon slightly better than stock in this specific situation, especially against high-skilled scouts. But that's it. You're still worse at fighting everything else. You can put the buff banner on it to negate some of the downsides, but I don't think it makes the weapon inherently better. You also need to deal damage in order to get the increase in damage, thus you see the problem here. Another soldier primary with reduced damage is the airstrike. This weapon increases your clip with each kill and rapidly increases your attack speed while rocket jumping. But when using this weapon how it's intended, you get a minus 30% blast radius on your rockets. So combined with the damage reduction and damage fall off, it does very little damage at medium or long range unless the enemy is standing still or really grouped up together. You'll also find yourself constantly needing to reload and running out of ammo for not much benefit. But using this like a normal rocket launcher, you don't really feel that reduction in damage or blast radius at close and point blank range, except maybe against a heavy or someone overhealed. But once you start reaching medium range, you really do feel that damage reduction compared to stock. Overall, it's a slight downgrade to stock, and the increased clip size doesn't make up for it. You can occasionally get lucky with a burst of rockets and kill multiple enemies pushing a payload or defending a small area, but I've found that to be inconsistent regardless of skill level. When trying to think of a situation or other weapon that could improve the airstrike over the other primaries, I did a bunch of testing with the buff banner since mini crits don't have damage drop off. So on paper it sounds amazing being able to fire like 5 to 6 mini crit rockets in an instant that deal between 50 and 100 damage each, all at once. But again, I found it to be too situational and inconsistent. Maybe it's a small blast radius with the slow moving rockets, or maybe I just need to work on my timing and accuracy. If you can get that strategy to work consistently, then you could bring this weapon above rejected with the buff banner, but I personally haven't been able to. Before I move on to other weapons, I just want to say that I'm comparing the Liberty Launcher and Airstrike to the stock rocket launcher rather than to each other, despite them having similar stats. They both have an increased clip and decreased damage, but their functions are actually quite different for each other, since the function of the airstrike actually works against it, while the function of the Liberty Launcher sort of turns it into a more accurate secondary weapon. Next, let's talk about the default rocket launcher and the Cowmangler. It's important that I talk about them together because the Cowmangler's stats are going to determine where the stock is placed on this list. So no ammo needed. This is only a minor positive since you don't really have any ammo issues with the primary here unless you're using the airstrike or the Beggar's Bazooka. No random critical hits. This is only a minor negative since you shouldn't be relying on random crits to begin with, but it is noticeable. Only 18 damage per shot to buildings. This is an extreme negative since it makes you unable to destroy sentries. Mini crits in place of normal crits. Now this is an interesting one since it seems to apply just to the crit streak. It's a minor negative effect since it's so specific, but the hidden minus 25% damage from losing the damage ramp up on top of this is going to make the crit streak pretty useless here. A charged shot that deals mini crit damage and afterburn damage. This is an extreme positive, let me tell you. Basically a point blank rocket and score shot together at any range. With the minimum splash damage, you'll be dealing about 109 damage in total with the afterburn, so low health classes that have lost a bit of health can die to this if they don't get the healing in time. On a fully accurate shot, this weapon does 170 damage. This is enough to kill all low health classes near instantly, and even medics despite their health regen. Demos and soldiers that have lost a bit of health will also die to this if they can't get healing in time. This weapon is perfect for ambushing around corners, destroying snipers from across the map. Really, any choke point or defensive position is vulnerable to this charged Death Star laser. It's also completely free since you don't need ammo, and the risk involved is actually quite small since you can perfectly time a shot just as you peek around a corner. The charged shot can also disable sentries for 4 seconds, which is really not much use at all when a different rocket launcher would instead destroy the sentry. On paper it seems supportive, so you disable the sentry and another teammate would destroy it, but quite often an engineer can just stall by healing the sentry. However, the charged shot can still instantly kill an engie if you hit them, or even disable the sentry long enough for you to reload 2 shots and then kill him within that 4-second window. So overall, the Cowmangler is a direct upgrade to stock when fighting players, but a direct downgrade when fighting sentries. The 4-second stun on the sentry is nowhere near as effective as just destroying the sentry, so it goes in unacceptable for that. Combining it with the shotgun does allow you to effectively use that 4-second window to either kill the engie or destroy the sentry, but only one or the other. I think it makes the Cowmangler slower at taking down a sentry, but not necessarily bad at it so long as you use the shotgun. Against multiple sentries, yeah, it sucks, with or without the shotgun. Same goes for mini sentries at medium range, since the shotgun is definitely going to struggle with that distance and hitbox. Some situations with sentries will keep it in unacceptable regardless of the shotgun or not. Anyway, since the Cowmangler is a direct upgrade to stock against players, that puts the stock in rejected even though it's such a good weapon. But the Cowmangler's charge shot with infinite ammo very clearly outweighs the lack of random critical hits. If you don't use the charge at all, then yeah, against players it's pretty much the same as stock, but I thought it was important to separate verse sentry and verse players into different categories. Okay, moving on to the Beggar's Bazooka. This is a weird weapon. You have a clip of 0, but an insanely fast firing speed for up to 3 rockets you can hold. It has a reduced explosion radius of minus 20%, which to be honest I don't really notice in most engagements. I very much noticed the minus 30 when testing the airstrike, but not the minus 20 here. Probably because the bazooka is best used at close range if you plan on actually hitting something. The weapon has a slightly random deviation of the rockets you fire, meaning you rely on luck to hit anything at medium range and above. Even at close range, the slight deviation might really help you, accidentally, or might just get you killed because you hit a wall that was slightly too close to you. The random rocket direction is only one weird thing about this. The other thing is the weapon's rapid firing speed, which stacks faster than the stock when it comes to reloading, allowing you to keep spamming left click. So reloading then immediately firing the bazooka takes around 1.44-ish seconds, and then 1.28 seconds if you keep mashing the fire button. While the stock would take 1.72 if you had no clip, but if you already have a full clip on the stock, then the first shot would be instant, and the next 3 shots would only be 0.8 seconds compared to the 1.28 on the bazooka. What this means is that if you get attacked unexpectedly, it takes you almost 1.5 seconds to fire back, compared to 0 seconds on the stock. This is much more significant than people realise, but if you can just keep spam firing the bazooka, then you may just have more damage output than the stock in a prolonged firefight. Maybe. Who knows? The rockets might just miss if they decide to, or not. Anyway, this weapon is inconsistent and to me very annoying, but certainly not bad. Ambushing around corners with a barrage of 3 rockets can be effective, or not, since there is more room for error with that minus 20% explosion radius, but also less room for error since you're firing more rockets. I don't know where the rockets are going, and on the other hand, neither does the enemy. And maybe, just maybe, the rockets don't know either. Have you ever thought that it's more about the journey and not the destination, Me neither. Rejected. But an upgrade. Or a downgrade. I don't know. Consult with wind spirits or something. There is also the mid-air overload jumping that I forgot to mention. Extremely good for mobility, but it takes a lot of skill to use correctly. You also need the gunboats or an activated battalion's backup if you plan on surviving and leaving your destination. Next is the direct miss. I love this weapon. Extremely fast projectile speed, a good increase in damage, and a very small blast radius. Out of all the weapons I've rambled on about, this is probably the easiest to place. Do not use this at low skill, since the projectile speed will work against you, leading you to miss everything. But definitely use this at high skill, since the high projectile speed will allow you to hit anything, at almost any range. The weapon also has a hidden reduction for self-damage, since that 25% increase here does not get applied to you. The weapon also gives you mini crits against enemies you bounced up in the air, or other soldiers rocket jumping around. This scales with skill, but is entirely unnecessary because of how OP this weapon already is. Sentries can be 2-shot at any range, which is insanely powerful. Mini sentries will be turned to dust in a single hit. At close range, the 112 damage will 2-shot any class except a heavy. At close to point blank range, the damage will pass that 125 threshold and instantly annihilate any low health class. I've also found that scouts are unable to get close to some of the best direct hit users I've seen, since they just get clapped out of the sky no matter how many tricky dodges they do. In a one-on-one engagement, this is the best soldier primary to use at the top skill level, although the Cowmangler would still be better at fighting a group. The direct hit is still good against a group, but it's often a slightly slower fight because of the reduction in splash damage. You can still hit 2 or 3 enemies at once if they are directly next to each other and you aim at their feet, so again it's very skill dependent. It should also be noted that the projectile speed makes it very difficult for Pyros to air blast, and only high skill ones can do it consistently. So with that in mind, I do think you have more flexibility for your choice of secondary. Lastly is the black box. You get 20 HP back per rocket, scaling up to 90 damage at the cost of 1 clip. It's pretty similar to a stock rocket launcher, and I would consider it the defensive equivalent of it. It's pretty easy to get that full 20 HP when fighting multiple enemies at any range, since it also includes the splash damage you deal in the final calculation. You're sacrificing damage output for survivability, and I do think it's a much better trade-off here than it is with the scout secondary in the previous video. The pocket pistol's healing is slow and only after a full clip of damage, while the black box is instant and very easy to get with each shot. The wiki says that the black box is weaker in a sustained firefight because of needing to reload more often. This is, I would say, incorrect most of the time, because a sustained firefight means more healing, and since the soldier's primary already deals so much damage, being slower and more attritional with your fights is actually going to work to your benefit. It's less immediate damage, but better overall survivability. Now, the weakness of a sustained firefight is a fight that really shouldn't be sustained, so situations where you need to deal more damage or else you're not going to survive. It's a little tricky to describe, but basically, if you needed a 4th rocket immediately after the 3rd, and that damage outweighs the 40 to 60 healing you got, then the black box is weaker. But the primary does so much damage, and the healing is better in most situations. Often the health gained back gives you enough time to reload and fire another rocket again to get more health, so I don't think you're losing damage output if you're using this defensively. I would say this is an upgrade for a slower defensive playstyle, but with aggressive use you're really going to feel that missing clip. Not a downgrade, but it'll hold you back a bit. I also forgot to mention, but the missing clip also hurts with mobility, so the black box very much favours sticking to the ground and disincentivises jumping into combat. The weapon combinations I can think of here don't inherently improve the black box. The shotgun is probably the best, since it makes up for that missing rocket. The Conqueror or the Battalion's backup do stack well for increasing survivability, but getting hard countered by a Pyros air blast basically nullifies that. I mean, you have 3 rockets and no damage dealing secondary, so any half decent Pyro can beat a black box Conqueror soldier of really any skill level. Okay, that's all the primaries. Let me try to understand what it is I've made here. The Liberty Launcher and Airstrike are bad soldier weapons, but not bad overall. The Beggar's Bazooka can be good if you spam left click, but there's a lot of luck involved with the barrage mechanic. Black Box is best for personal defense. Cow Mangler is the best against groups and at long range. Direct Hit is the best at various things as it scales with skill, mostly single encounters and sentries, but is still extremely effective against groups and at long range. The Rocket Launcher is the best against sentries and the best against groups of enemies after the Cow Mangler. I think that covers everything. A few more final notes. I find the best players use either the stock Rocket Launcher, Black Box, or Direct Hit. No gold box here because it's hard to pin down one specific weapon. They each have different playstyles that I've seen used amazingly by the best players. I didn't mention the original here since its stats are identical to the default launcher, and it's really only a matter of preference when it comes to positioning. Also, the Direct Hit doesn't get an upgrade arrow overall because it's less damage against a group for more damage against a single target, so it's a trade-off you have to make. Plus, it's very much an all-or-nothing weapon with a great deal of risk. On the opposite end, you have the Black Box and Cow Mangler, which can minimize risk significantly when used correctly. Moving on to the secondary weapons. As you can see here, there's a great deal of fire at the bottom of the screen. This is because your choice of secondary will determine how well you can fight a pyro. Despite your primary being extremely powerful, it's almost unusable in a one-on-one engagement against a pyro who knows how to air blast. If you choose a secondary which cannot damage them, then winning against a good pyro is almost impossible just by yourself. They're also faster than you and require at least 2 or 3 rockets to take them down from full health if they do make mistakes with their air blast. So starting off, the stock shotgun and panic attack, both very good, solid weapons. These are extremely important in close range encounters where the self-damage from your rockets can often get you killed. Maybe you've run out of clip on your primary, in which case switching to your shotgun is faster than reloading. Maybe there's a scout up in your face, or there's a pyro coming at you. Lots of situations where you need a shotgun, so recommended for both. Is what I would have said before extensive testing. Now, I've used the default shotgun religiously. In my thousands of hours, I have picked stock every time. But I have to say that the panic attack is better, if only slightly. Initially in my mind I thought that they were too similar in quality, with the panic attack being better at point blank and the stock better at close range and above, but I don't think that's the case. Looking at the stats, the panic attack is objectively better at point blank from the increase in bullets and faster deploy speed, while it's objectively worse at medium range and above due to the increased bullet spread, which is a fixed rectangle instead of within a circle like the stock. At close range, well, more bullets are going to hit, but they do slightly less damage. And at some point as you get further away, the weapon does less damage overall. But at close range, from my testing, it's either just as good as stock or slightly better. But when you put the 50% deploy time on top of that, it makes the panic attack a better weapon. The shotgun's use is more going to be at point blank and close range rather than close to medium range. So the panic attack is faster when you need it. It's not just faster to bring out and shoot, it's faster to bring out and reload. That's a big one. Whether you're in a fight, in between fights, or rapidly switching between your weapons, having that speed is a noticeable advantage. So the panic attack in recommended and the stock, this really hurts, but it goes in rejected. Even though it's better against pyros and medium range, if you get ambushed by one or they close the distance, then the panic attack is certainly better. It's better when you need it more. I think that's the best way to put it. The other shotgun, the reserve shooter, reduces your clip by 2 for mini crits against enemies you've bounced up in the air with your rockets. The weapon also switches slightly faster, but there are differing descriptions. On the wiki it says switching either way, but the in-game description says only deploy. Anyway, the increase in damage from mini crits is not as good as the damage potential you're losing by having a smaller clip. It can be fun to use, but a situation where a shot from the reserve shooter is better than a shot from the stock shotgun is quite rare. Basically, if you got a mini crit kill with this weapon, most of the time you would have gotten the same kill with the stock shotgun. Because guess what? You fired a rocket at their feet. That 20-30 damage difference is not as significant as you'd think, and it doesn't make up for having a smaller clip. So not a bad weapon, but a clear downgrade to the default shotgun. Both are on the same level here because the panic attack is the best soldier shotgun overall by just a little bit. Now moving on to the banner weapons. Buff Banner increases damage, Battalion's Backup increases defense, and the Conqueror gives healing. All 3 replace a damage dealing weapon, so to some degree they are unacceptable when fighting a competent pyro on your own. but in terms of the support they give your team, the buff banner and battalion's backup are some of the best weapons in the game. When holding position or breaking enemy position, these are the weapons you want to use. Now, if it's a sentry nest or well defended position with a sentry, you do mainly want the battalion's backup since it raises your resistance to 50%, plus the mini crits you'd get from the buff banner don't affect sentries. But there are some situations where you'd want the mini crits instead, especially if you're going up against overhealed heavies or soldiers. Something that you need more damage to take down and extra defense for you isn't going to help. So I'd certainly recommend both, and I can't really place one over the other overall. But for the Conqueror, the healing and speed it gives as support just isn't as good compared to the straight damage or defense. It's not going to help someone who's already at full health, and the speed it gives can work against you since it may make it harder to aim. But the real benefit of this weapon is the passive self-healing. It's great for a more defensive attritional playstyle, even if it isn't the best for support. Now the other banners can also be used defensively quite well, so the Conqueror isn't a direct upgrade in this situation, although I have found better mobility with the Conqueror since you can heal after rocket jumping around. Next, let's look at the Gunboats. This gives a 60% reduction in damage from rocket jumping. Extremely good for mobility, but deals no damage on its own. I don't really know where to place this. I think in specialized situations it can be very good, so big open maps while having the proper skills to rocket jump well. You are missing out on a damage dealer or supportive banner, but the mobility can be worth it the higher skill level you are, being able to get in, hit them hard, and get out, then repeat. If you're not at a higher skill level, then the weapon's bad. If you're in a more restricted map, then the weapon's bad. I think that's the best way to place this. Obviously it's fun to use jumping around the map, but if you're not able to deal significant damage while doing so, as well as survive to jump away, then it's no good practically speaking. You need the mobility to exceed the damage and support of these other weapons here. No good practically speaking is also the description I would give the man treads. It's funny to land on people, but you'd make better use of the Gunboats and the Market Gardener, or Conqueror and Market Gardener. Now it does have a higher damage potential than the Market Gardener if you fall far enough, but it's not as reliable. To take this weapon seriously, you're damaging yourself by rocket jumping and throwing yourself into an enemy that if you miss, the full damage will kill you, and if it doesn't kill you, then they probably would have survived the man treads anyway. So it's high risk for not much reward. The other stats here are an attempt to improve your mobility, but it's just not as good as the reduction in self-damage from the Gunboats. Moving on to the Righteous Bison, this weapon fires a small, slow laser that does between 10 and 20 damage per hit depending on the range. Now it goes through multiple enemies and can hit the same enemy 2 or 3 times, so at close range it will often do only 40 to 60 damage, which really sucks compared to the shotgun. It's got a smaller clip, does less damage, plus the laser is too slow and too small to hit anything reliably. This weapon is terrible all around. The intended use of this, I think, is against a group or line of enemies at a choke point, but the damage it does is so small that the splash damage from the rocket launcher is infinitely better instead. It's like whoever designed this weapon forgot that the soldier had a primary. Anyway, definitely unacceptable. Lastly is the base jumper. This weapon is sort of the opposite of the Gunboats, negating fall damage rather than blast damage, but also reducing mobility instead of increasing it. I haven't found any practical use for this, unfortunately. Even though you can combo it with the airstrike, Beggar's Bazooka, or Market Gardener, it all has the same problem. You are a slow moving target in the sky. The lack of mobility is far worse overall than the reduction in fall damage, so definitely unacceptable and a downgrade. Okay, some final notes for this section. The best players I've seen use the stock shotgun. The Gunboats are pretty close, but for a one-on-one, there's a certain type of soldier that will just crush you with the shotgun once they've used up their primary. Put a medic on this guy and he becomes painful to fight against. The stock shotgun I'm tempted to bring above rejected since it is slightly better than the panic attack at close to medium range, but that range is also where the rocket launcher is best used. Close enough for you to be accurate, but far enough away to avoid self-damage. And since the soldier's primary is so good, you use the shotgun mainly when you can't use the primary, which is at close range and when you run out of rockets. Thus the panic attack is better overall. Now let's look at the melee weapons. The main problem with the soldier is that he is too slow, which makes getting in range to hit an enemy incredibly difficult. You can get every third or fourth swing to be a crit if you deal around 200 to 300 damage before going to melee, but you're slow and crits are unreliable. The stock shovel deals 65 damage on a hit, the shotgun deals 90, unacceptable it is. The Equalizer requires you to have lost almost half your health before you can even do as much damage as a shovel, so definitely unacceptable. This weapon does get better the lower health you are, but still not as reliable as a gun. In a situation where you're on low health, you want to do a fighting retreat, not running in trying to get a lucky hit. Any combos with this weapon, like the Buff Banner or Conqueror, are just not as good as simply retreating from point blank range while using another weapon. This is unfortunately not possible with the half Satoichi. You can't holster it without losing health, so you have to fight. But you also can't turn your previous damage into crits, and it's slow to bring out when you need it, something that the in-game description doesn't tell you. The extra range is good, and the healing sounds good on paper, but the speed, you're too slow, and there is no honor in dying a fool. Next, let me talk about the disciplinary action and the escape plan. Both of these weapons make up for the soldier's lack of speed as their intended use. The escape plan is the best for self-preservation. If you get knocked down to low health, then the speed on this weapon can save your life, and you don't need to do a fighting retreat when you now run as fast as a scout. The disciplinary action is the best for support, since it briefly boosts the speed on you and your teammate, which helps with getting to the front line faster or getting to health faster. Both can be tricky to time properly. With the escape plan, you get marked for death, so you have to instantly get out of combat when bringing it out, or else you will get yourself killed. This is more dangerous to use in wide open areas. With the whip, you don't want to use it in a way that would reduce your damage output, so you shouldn't be using it to escape combat, and shouldn't be using it in combat for a speed boost. The reason for this is because firing an extra rocket is better than a few seconds of going faster in most situations. Whether in combat or trying to escape it, if you're spending time aiming at your teammate to get speed, then it actually slows you down. Not in physical speed, but it slows down the damage you're firing back, if that makes any sense. This weapon is also the best here at direct combat, despite that damage reduction of minus 25%. If you combine the high crit rate from the damage you've dealt plus the 70% increase in range, you can become quite deadly in combat with this. If you manage to do like 400 to 600 damage before bringing it out, then your crit rate becomes every second or third swing. But even at best, a swing will deal 100 damage on average, either 50 or 150. But you know what else does a ton of damage and is far faster and more reliable in every way? Yeah, the shotgun is always better. It's a similar situation with the escape plan, where if you deal tons of damage, then pull it out to run away, you will crit every second or third swing. So you're a glass cannon running as fast as a scout that can potentially KO everything in your path. Fun, but not reliable to fight with. Both recommended for different reasons. Not for combat, but rather the mobility that they give. The whip is better for your team, the escape plan is better for you, which may be better for your team in the long run. Neither are upgrades of each other, but the disciplinary action is certainly better than the shovel when it comes to combat, although it's not its intended function, so I'm not going to give it an arrow. Next up is the Market Gardener. This deals 195 damage if you hit an enemy before you land. It's noticeably worse than the stock shovel due to the lack of random crits, but scales significantly with skill and mobility, since you're trading random crits for guaranteed crits. If you can't use this properly, then the stock shovel is better. If you're at a higher skill, then this is the most powerful melee here, but still not as good as firing a rocket from the sky. If you plan on making consistent use of this weapon without removing a primary, then you do need the gunboats. There are not too many situations where the Market Gardener is better than the rocket launcher, but they do exist, and there are more of them the better you are with this weapon. At some point there is a crazy level of skill I've seen. It's rare, but amazing to watch. I once saw a dead ringer spy, an invisible dead ringer spy, get sent back to the grave by the Market Gardener. I've seen soldiers and demos gliding through the air, struck down by a Market Gardener just passing through, to crit someone on the ground. Snipers, afraid to see open sky above them, staying indoors the whole match. You see that scout fighting over there? Jumping around like a coked up headless chicken? Boom! Get the fuck out of here! Slapped out of the sky by some soldier jumping in. Yeah, at the top skill level, these guys have trouble not getting a crit. They're so wired to avoid their feet touching the ground that it's funny. Interestingly, no gold box here, or for this section. The best soldiers I've seen overall don't really use the melee. They should be using the whip or escape plan, but from what I've seen it's mostly a primary with the shotgun, and switching back and forth. Last weapon here to finish is the Pain Train. The purpose of this is the increased capture rate it gives, rather than a use in combat. The effects it has are passive, so it's statistically no different to the shovel when you switch to it. There are definitely going to be situations where that capture rate saves the day, and situations where that bullet vulnerability gets you killed. It's probably the only weapon I can think of that's designed for the objective. So yeah, in combat it's unacceptable. For payloads and control points, I would say it's acceptable if you're actually going for the objective. I wouldn't quite recommend it because its use for the objective may not be as good overall as the speed from the whip or the escape plan. It really depends on how much that capture rate helps, and bullet vulnerability hurts. Some final notes for this section. I forgot to mention the reduced healing rate on the escape plan while it's active. It's a similar situation to the mark for death, that if it impacts you in any way, then you're not using the weapon properly. If you're being healed by a medic, then you want to be doing a fighting retreat, not just running away. For the marker gardener, I said that firing a rocket down while you're in the air is more effective than the melee. That isn't fully correct. I meant firing a rocket, then switching to your shotgun as you're landing. That together does roughly the same amount as the 195 damage from the marker gardener, plus you can hit multiple enemies. Rocket jumping and marker gardening is a pretty difficult thing to balance because there's always a trade-off somewhere. With the rocket jumper, you have maximum mobility, you have a lot of freedom on like the really big maps, but obviously you can't fight more than one person at a time. If you've got a rocket launcher with the gunboats, then you do have to be a lot more cautious when jumping in to try and get a marker gun, because you are sacrificing a bit of HP every time you do that. So you do have to be using it more sparingly and know where health packs are around the map. And at the end of the day, you only have 4 rockets, so you're missing out on a whole secondary. Last section here is on the best combos of soldier weapons. This section won't have any text or ranking splits for situational use, so I'll be ranking them entirely on a combo's overall effectiveness. I'll start with the rocket launcher shotgun combo, which I've already got placed. I said before that the panic attack is slightly better than the stock shotgun, so I've got that split between recommended and rejected. But for the primary, there's a whole bunch of different situations where you should or shouldn't be using one primary over another, but I've got them all in recommended, assuming you're using them where they shine the most. If you're up against a group, you don't want the direct hit, you'd want the stock rocket launcher or the cow mangler. At long range, you'd want the cow mangler or direct hit. Close range, black box, so you'd heal the self-damage that you deal. Against a faraway sentry, you want the direct hit. Against a close-by sentry, you want the stock. If you're holding an area, you'd probably want the black box, or something for a longer fight. If you're holding a choke point, the cow mangler might be best, and so on. The only situation I can see where the stock shotgun is better than the panic attack is against a mini sentry at medium or close to medium range, and only if you can't blow it up because you have the cow mangler. When the enemy gets too close, you'd want the faster secondary, so the panic attack is always better when you need it the most. If you combo the direct hit with the reserve shooter, you get the mid-air mini crits combo, since both weapons are able to deal that extra 35% more damage when the enemy is in the air. It's very good, but doesn't really work how you'd want it. It's difficult to launch enemies into the air, and it's difficult to hit them in the air. The mini crits from the direct hit are often overkill, and the mini crits from the reserve shooter are often negligible compared to other shotguns. Plus, the small clip hurts you long term. Pretty good weapons separately, but the combo doesn't really fit, so rejected. A more complementary combo would be the direct hit and the buff banner. Now, this is the combo with the consistently highest damage output, provided you have very high skill. With those 10 seconds of mini crits, every rocket will be doing around 76 damage to 152 damage at any range, 152 if you hit them straight on. The mini crits remove the damage drop off, and the direct hit has the fastest projectile for the soldier, so together you can pretty much two-shot anything in that 10-second window, provided you can actually hit anything. This is an amazing combo if you have the skill that the direct hit requires, but the combo does not have a shotgun, which runs into a very big problem, that being the Pyros Air Blast. But this weapon is also very difficult to deflect thanks to that increased 80% projectile speed. Then again, there are highly skilled Pyros out there who can counter it. No, I think this combo is the perfect balance of damage and support. Buff Banner is fantastic for your team and complements the direct hit significantly when it comes to damage. It also scales with skill. The more damage you do with it, the faster you get those mini crits, the more damage you do. I think this does go unrecommended. You can get around those Pyros without the shotgun, but the direct hit is the only primary which can, and you need to have the skill to pull it off. If you add the Equalizer onto it, you get the full damage combo, where the Equalizer does consistently the highest damage for a melee when you're at low HP. You can stack that with the buff banner for even more melee damage, but at the end of the day, you are reducing your damage output by not simply reloading the direct hit. So this goes in rejected. Sure, there's always that situation where you have to switch to the melee so you don't die to self-damage, but you'll be slow, at low HP, trying to hit an enemy that's faster than you. It's typically not a situation where you survive. With the Cow Mangler, I thought up the ranged anti-ammo combo, where you combine it with the Righteous Bison. No, don't do that. No. Anything the Righteous Bison can do, a shotgun or rocket launcher can do better in every single way. I've seen some attempts to combo with the Kritzkrieg, where the medic activates the crits and the soldier fires these small, slow projectiles which can hit multiple targets multiple times. If it does hit anything, you're looking at 60 to 120 damage on a target at any range. It's not bad, but use anything else, please. Really anything else. Moving on to the black box combos, a fantastic defensive weapon paired with other defensive weapons. So the most well known is the black box and Conqueror. You get healing from the primary along with the passive regen from the secondary. When activating the Conqueror, you get the healing from 1/3 of the damage you deal on top of the plus 20 HP per hit. So this is an extremely good combo. You can stack it even more. Sit next to a dispenser, get a medic on you, be as greedy as you want, because this is the defense loadout. Except against Pyros, you will die to them. Now, putting the battalion's backup on instead is also great for defense, but in a different way. You get 20 more HP, a 10% increase, and the buff on the weapon reduces incoming damage instead of giving healing. It isn't as good for personal defense, but is definitely better in support for your team, since I said before that the Conqueror is just not as good in support compared to the fantastic uses of the other two banners. If you add on half Satoichi onto the Black Box and Conqueror, you get the full healing combo, where each weapon can contribute to gaining health. But you get the same issues that come with most soldier melees, where bringing it out to fight is simply not as good as reloading the primary or secondary. This is especially the case with this sword, 75% slower to deploy and holster, and if you don't kill someone, you lose health switching it out. This weapon is a liability far more than it has use. Now, I can see potential when you activate the Conqueror and start speeding around with the sword, a sword that now heals you both on hit and on kill, but there is more potential in just firing another rocket, so rejected. Moving on to combos with the Liberty Launcher. The full mobility loadout combines the self-damage reductions from both the Liberty Launcher and the Gunboats for a total of only 12 to 13 damage per jump. You could instead add on the Conqueror for passive healing rather than damage reduction, especially if you don't know or can't reach health pack spots around the map. The escape plan on the end is another addition to increased self-mobility. Now, this combo actually goes in unacceptable since you aren't converting the extra mobility into extra damage. You'll be moving around a lot, but you won't be doing much else. If you instead have the Marker Gardener, then you are able to turn that mobility into damage through guaranteed crits. This really applies to any rocket launcher gunboats combo, but this one here has the least amount of damage to yourself while jumping around, while at the same time still having a damage dealing primary. If you go Rocket Jumper and Marker Gardener, it's great for the Marker Gardener, but bad for damage overall. I know the Troller is not supposed to be taken seriously like this, but for this list I think I have to. The best secondary here is typically the Conqueror, so you can use the passive regen to heal yourself from the full damage you take. The Man-Treads is another option if you want to go full Troller, so you have the choice between two different deaths from above. Both combos are fun, both also unacceptable. Moving on to the combos with the Airstrike. I mentioned before that the increased clip and rapid fire combined with the mini crits sounds great on paper, but I haven't been able to get it working consistently here. There's an issue of the decreased blast radius, the issue of running out of ammo constantly, the issue of health, since I've found that the minus 15% self-damage isn't that significant. Even when you activate the buff banner, you only have that initial attack to jump up in the air and fire all your rockets down. The rest of the time you're spending with the mini crits is reloading. So you have to get the timing perfect, and it typically has to be against a choke point, payload, or control point in an open map. I think the main issue I've found with the combo is that most of my kills from the sky probably would have occurred even without the buff banner. So yeah, I haven't been able to get this to work. I'll put this in rejected, but if others have had more consistent success, then it could probably go higher. If you pair the parachute with the airstrike and marker gardener, you can amplify the damage of those weapons. With the airstrike, you spend more time in the sky, so rockets can be fired in a shorter time without the self-damage from landing. With the Marker Gardener, you have the ability to properly line up your target, giving you a much wider window of opportunity to get a crit on them. But your mobility is severely reduced, to the point where you are a dead man gliding, a slow-moving, easy target. So this combo is certainly unacceptable. Next is the full support loadout. You've got the disciplinary action to boost the speed of your team, and a banner to aid in another area. For a primary, there isn't really one designed for support. I mean, maybe the black box to keep you in the fight longer, but ultimately the best support is just killing the enemy. Now, the Conqueror isn't as good for support as the other two banners, as I've said, but it's still an extremely good combo with the whip if your intent is to buff your team's speed, using the melee out of combat and the banner in combat for the speed boost. I did forget to mention previously that the Conqueror requires 1/5 less to activate than the other two. It's notable, but that doesn't put it on the same level as the other two banners in terms of overall support, but the whip can still work really well with it in terms of speed. I do want to go recommended here, but Pyros are so damn dangerous, and you can't really fight them without a shotgun. Even if you've got teammates helping you, a high-skilled Pyro can juggle air blasts and their secondary to fight all of you. So the existence of the Pyro really does prevent these types of loadouts from being the best overall. Next is the Conqueror and Escape Plan, the full speed loadout. In my testing, I tried to see if the Conqueror's speed stacked with anything. It doesn't with the whip, but it certainly does with the Escape Plan. Unfortunately, when you use the Conqueror, you do want to be dealing damage to get health back, rather than sprinting away. Now, there are types of situations where extra mobility could be useful, just not many here. Typically, the speed from the Escape Plan is good enough to retreat, or the healing you get from continually fighting is good enough to stay. But combining the speed of both is mostly unnecessary. Plus, the banner doesn't exactly help your team if you're running in the opposite direction to the battlefield. There's probably more combos here that I've missed, but these are the main ones. Also, I can't fit anymore. There's the potential of using the Conqueror and Equalizer together, so you'd go down to low health, activate the banner, then rush in, but the combo is self-defeating. You'd get healing from dealing damage, which would then cause you to deal less damage. Yeah, no. There's the Rocket Jumper and Gunboats. Absolutely recommended. In fact, it's the best combo, really, especially if you're sick and tired of the secondary being useful in any way. Combine this further with the Stock Shovel and you have the perfect loadout. This combo shows that you are not afraid of anything. And as terrible as this is, it's still probably better than using the Righteous Bison, and I'm only half joking. There's also combos with the Gunboats and proper primary weapons like the stock rocket launcher and black box, but it really depends on map, depends on the skill, depends on health pack locations, so I can't really rank where Gunboat soldiers would go overall. I am more biased towards sticking to the ground, and when running out of rockets, it is typically more effective to switch to a shotgun than it is to reload a rocket, but it really does depend. Looking at this list, you can see a lot of great weapons brought down by using another not so good weapon. Everything inacceptable would be recommended here if the Pyro couldn't air blast. And I am tempted to bring the direct hit buff banner combo down because of that, but I do think it is one of the combos with the highest potential, both for you and the team. Okay, that is everything for the soldier. This video took way too long to make. If I change my mind about anything or have made some mistakes somewhere, then I'll put it in the description. See ya.